Morgan, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's lovely to see you here, and I look forward to our recording today. It's for anyone that will be watching this on YouTube, we'll do it with video, and anyone that will listen to podcasts as audio only, it'll be just as much fun, although we are more entertaining with the visual effect as well.
Thank you for having me, Gary. It's great to see you again.
Well, and I've gotten a chance to know you over many years, Morgan, but some of the questions that I'll ask you today are a bit trivial and about the audience to get to know you better. So I'll start with something a bit more generic, and then we'll
Sure.
get to some more fun stuff later on. So tell us a bit about Morgan. Who is Morgan MacLeod?
It's a big question. So I am a mother of two teenage boys, 16 and almost 14. I grew up in Canada, so born and raised in Canada, born in Ottawa, grew up in Oakville, uh, actually went off to Western University and took something completely impractical like film and sociology for my degree, or for my undergrad. And got into marketing a little bit later. Well, after school, and from there have been nonstop in there, just passionate about it. And I run a business with my husband, so co-owners of Cubicle Fugitive.
Well, and I may ask you more about that because
Mhm.
there's people that always think about don't go into business with their spouse. Well, that's
I
like.
know.
Morgan, who had the biggest impact on your life growing up?
I think probably like many people, I would say my parents in many ways. They are both extremely hardworking individuals. And I think one of the things, my dad has his own company. He went out on his own probably when I was in my teenage years, and he started his own, he's an economist by trade, created his own economic research and market forecasting company. And that I think had a big impact on me as I was growing up. Although I always had a love of other things, I always kind of intimately knew that I would want to have my own business someday. I joined junior achievement in high school and all that sort of stuff. So it was always just sort of paramount for me that eventually I think I'd want to start my own business. So I think that was a big impact when he did it. He was home a lot more. We got to see him, and he was just happier, I think, too, of having his own business that he could do for himself. So I would say that was a big impact for me.
And I can appreciate that. Now, this is why we do this podcast. We still learn new things about one another. I didn't know about your involvement in junior achievement.
Oh,
I
were
was
you too?
well. I was on the board of Junior Achievement Canada for 6 years, and now I'm on Junior Achievement Americas for the last 4 years. So.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, it's a fantastic organization. Like it really does sort of, I think, inspire entrepreneurial talents in kids and help them think about, what could you do or what could you create and then, actually getting you to put that business in places, which is really cool.
Well, and case in point, you are an example of having experienced that in school and then now living it in real life.
That's right. That's right.
Uh, so, Morgan, growing up, or rather, as you were going through school, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up, or is this something you figured out as you went? Other than knowing that you one day you wanted to have a business of your own in terms of the
Yeah, no,
industry or the type of work.
I don't think I knew I wanted to get into marketing per se. When I was a kid, I was very much into acting. I was actually a child actor, did commercials and stuff like that. So that's why I went off and did film school. And I really thought I would want to do that, and I loved it. But I also loved when I got to university. Um, I loved sociology. I loved the study of psychology and sociology, and I loved business and history and that sort of stuff. So I think university kind of opened my eyes to a whole bunch of other things. And I think acting's a great profession, but it's so unstable in many ways, right? So hard work doesn't necessarily always translate into work. And I had the ability to work with my dad a little bit too, and helping him with market research. So I think when I got out of school, I really wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. I actually got a job at CTV, which is a television station, which was fantastic in research. And it was there that I really started to get a sense of marketing and business and how that kind of pulled in the creativity and the creation aspect of what I think I love so much about creative arts, with the strategy and everything else around, how do you take, business theory and that sort of stuff and pull it all together and, use research. So it was really the coupling of everything that came together. I think when I started working at CTV, I loved it. I was there for 5.5 years. I went back to school and did marketing at Ryerson University, or then known as Ryerson University, and it was great. And I haven't looked back ever since.
And I didn't know about the child actor piece either. Like, now it all makes sense. I can see it. I can see it, but I didn't know about it.
That's right.
So, any cool projects you can tell us that you did or that you participated in?
I mean, I always say, you know how you do all those business function things, and you go on there like, well, tell us one fun fact about yourself. So when I was maybe grade 9, I got a role in a Canadian movie with Paul Anka and Ryan Reynolds. So it's a
No?
very not well known Canadian film. I actually don't even know if it's on his list, but I had a bit part in that, so that was fun. And then a lot of commercials, McDonald's and Noctima and all that sort of stuff. So it was a great gig, and all that money that I made from that helped me go backpacking in Europe after university. So it was great.
I'm gonna have to watch some of these clips now. Now that I know.
I They're buried in the internet somewhere. So
But it's like I said, that's part of the reason why we do these. That you really get to learn about the everyone participating in the podcast a lot more things that sometimes, although you may have known people for years, it doesn't come out in
it's true,
conversational.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I
So
haven't put that
other
on my
than
business resume.
you should. Other than impressing people with your child acting and adult acting skills, that also explains why you're really good at public speaking events.
Oh,
You had that experience early on. How,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
no, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think my parents always make fun of the fact that I kind of, came out of the womb talking and haven't ever stopped. But so I think I came by it a little bit naturally. I definitely have worked at it. Again, school though, when we were young, they used to, I think from the time you were in grade 2 on, we always had to do public speeches and that sort of stuff. So I loved doing that. I remember one horrifying experience as a kid where, I left my cue cards at home, and so I got up to speak, and I was panicked because I was still at the point where you'd memorize your speech and couldn't remember anything. So from then on, I think that was like grade 4, I stopped trying to memorize and just started to understand. And I actually also went through and did Second City training just for fun, not for any idea that I would necessarily become an improv person. But I think Second City helps you think on your feet a lot and helps you be prepared on your feet, and just be a little bit more sort of in the moment and go with the flow. So if things goes wrong. So I think that if I could give any advice to anyone who wants to get out and speak, I know a lot of people do other sort of speakers training and stuff like that, but I found that was an exceptional way to kind of learn and keep you agile and aware and in the moment on stage. So that I think is a big part of makes me feel more comfortable, right? I don't get as frazzled up on the stage maybe as some.
No, and it's really good skills. In fact, this is the first time I hear of Second City. Now I'm gonna have to look it up.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's a whole they have a whole sort of series of classes and stuff like that. It's just I mean it's a lot of fun too. But yeah, you just work on sort of improving, and I talk a lot about it at the office when with my team of they have this term called yes and. So it's like anytime you're sort of in a scene and you're blocking stuff with somebody, if it's all improv, so you're up on a stage, and so Gary talks to me and says something and kind of changes the course of things. You got to figure out how to adapt to that and sort of take a little bit of what Gary's saying and add that into everything else. So I think that's been a key thing also of kind of running the business, but that's a definite Second City term that they use.
I really like it. Now I'm switching gears a little bit.
Sure.
What do you do in your free time? I know how busy business is, but when you get a chance to get that free time between work and the teenage boys, what does that look like?
For sure. Lots of hobbies. I think probably, one of our biggest hobbies is my husband and I run a business together, but we also have a lot of sort of similar interests. And one of the things that we love is board games. So we have a unhealthy number of board games. So during the pandemic, thank goodness our kids were at that age where they would still play with us and do that. But we play a lot of board games to kind of just after work you're kind of stressed or you're done, but you kind of want your brain to keep going. So that's a fun thing to love. I read a lot. Still love movies, so love watching tons of movies and travel. I think, if I could spend every dime on travel, that's where I would spend it. So we love to go and explore the world, which I know you do too, because you do a whole bunch of big travels every year.
Well, and it's to your point, Morgan. It really does open our eyes, and I enjoy it,
Yeah.
and I try to pack it in with business whenever I can,
Yeah.
much like how you have in many instances.
Yes, I have. Yes. Less lately, more personal travel, which has been nice, but for sure.
I know I touched on this already with your public speaking, but certainly I've noticed a lot with the Legal Marketing Association because you were really involved on a lot of panels, even helping put panels together. Did that come naturally? Was this the acting skills and this the Second City? Like, how what would you say was sort of the evolution to becoming a great public speaker?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, I think business necessity, for in all honesty. I don't know if I don't think I ever really sought out to be, a public speaker per se, or a keynote or anything like that. That wasn't it. It was just sort of, I knew that, when you're running a business, you have to get out there and you have to kind of put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and you have to be able to get out and network. And I love to learn. I'm really curious and I love to constantly read. So I think it was, and I like to share information. So I think that's kind of really honestly what drew me to public speaking, was if I can get up and share and somehow give somebody, impart information that they can take away and actually put into their day to day, then that's time well spent to me. And then hopefully it translates into new business, and hopefully it goes that way. And I love, as part of my job, I do a lot of interviewing, because we do a lot of branding for lawyers and stuff like that. And as part of our process, we would do a lot of one-on-one interviews. So I think the panel too, again, just being curious, and I get to moderate. I was putting one together right before we had our conversation. So I'm doing one at the LMA this year, and just being curious about, what do other people think, and what can they teach us, and that sort of stuff. So I love that part about public speaking, of hopefully trying to draw people's ideas out throughout the process.
No, and it's very important, Morgan. So I really, really appreciate that context. Um, Quick question for you. The in terms of the career journey, what were some of the pivotal points that brought you to where you are today? So, so the out of school, what did that look like, and then
Yeah.
how did you end up being going into business with your husband?
Sure. Okay. So, I guess key career things are, two things happened that made me not continue with my film career. Of I, realized that I was going to be working for free for months and months on end, was one, and then two, I'd gotten a job editing films and it didn't pan out. It was just, it fell through the budget cuts and stuff like that. So I ended up looking for places, and ended up at CTV, and I loved it. And I had an in because I had done research and stuff like that, and I loved that. But as I got more and more, I really into CTV, I want to be a part of the marketing aspect of things. So as I mentioned, I went back to school, and then luckily enough, they hired me, and I got to move into the marketing department there, and headed up their, um, sort of their. We did a lot of the, marketing of their shows and the sales and that sort of stuff, and I loved it. It was just sort of a fantastic spot for me. And had I not moved out to the West End, I probably would have stayed at CTV for many, many years. It was a great organization. But I took a branding job over at Torstar in their Hamilton Spectator office, and that forever changed, I think, my love and direction of where I was going to be. And I again went back to Schulich, and did a branding, study, and really read absolutely everything I could on branding. And I've kind of never looked back. So we're in our 20th year of Cubicle Fugitive, and, I've been doing branding for probably about 18 years, and love it. That's been fantastic. I think you asked me about how I started working with my husband. So he was the one who actually started the company. We used to be called Onyx Console when we first started, and he had started it as a, website and IT firm. And he'd worked at law firms many years, so he brought legal, and I was always in media. And funny enough, when I was off on maternity leave with my first baby, my boss had moved over to another place and brought me in and wanted me to do branding for his new company. And I was on mat leave, and my husband kept bringing me in. So really, it was kind of happenstance that I joined in Cubicle Fugitive. Although I always knew I wanted to start something, it wasn't really sort of a master plan of, oh, let's, set out and create this together. He had already started something, and I brought the marketing, and he brought the web and digital, and we haven't looked back since then. So it's been fun.
No, it certainly sounds like a lot of fun, but I can tell that you've loved the branding and marketing world since the early
Mhm.
days. So it all adds up.
Yeah.
Uh, so I told you I was going to probe you a bit more about this, but
Yeah.
how is it working with your husband, and what advice would you have for people that are considering it, or uh, would you recommend it? What are tips to optimize it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know if everyone could do. I mean, we're really good friends. We started off as friends, and so I think that's a key part of it. We have a lot of respect for each other, and still do. Um, I think it's really helpful that we each have different disciplines, if that makes sense. Like I know marketing and branding, and he knows technology and computer science and digital. And there is a lot of collaboration and overlap for sure in what we do. But we also kind of have our own little aspects of things. I think over the years we've kind of shared give and take of who you both can't be leaders at the same time, so who's going to lead on certain things. I say my biggest advice of kind of balancing it out. I mean, we talk shop all the time at home, so I would never give that advice. I don't think you could run a business with your spouse and not talk about business. But I think we just don't have the luxury of having petty arguments like other people, right? I always say my best advice is, I can't argue about the dishes because I got to go sit next to him all day at the office. So it's just that's I think the secret of success in many ways is respect for that other person and having your own areas that are kind of your domain, and don't necessarily waffle in and try and tell them what to do in their areas. And yeah, so I mean, but it's been great. I mean, not to say it's always easy, not to say that pandemic sharing a literal physical office space too on top of that wasn't stressful. But yeah, no, but it's been great. I wouldn't change it for sure.
No, it's and great advice, Morgan. There were some tips built in there that to anyone listening and considering working with their spouse, you can definitely make it work, and just
Yeah.
avoid the petty arguments.
Yeah,
Just
I
so,
think that's just a good rule for marriage though, right? Yeah. Don't sweat the small stuff, and you'll be
or
probably quite
life in
happy.
general, or life in
Yeah,
general.
exactly. Yeah, I know it's true. It's true.
It can make a huge difference when we pick our battles. So
Yes, exactly.
I'm obviously very familiar with Cubicle Fugitive, but not all our audience may. So tell us a bit more about Cubicle Fugitive. What made it to what it is today, and sort of over the course of the 20 years, and what everything that it does, in effect.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So we are a full service brand and marketing agency. So we specialize in professional services. I'd say really anyone that is business to business and selling thought leadership is kind of our core area. We definitely do a lot of branding. We do a lot of marketing and business development. We design and develop websites, and then really you name it after that of helping to drive business for companies. We have grown a lot over the years, so we're in our 20th year this year, which is pretty exciting. And we have just, I think, our focus has been to do things a little bit differently than other agencies. So both of us, when we were client side, dealt with other agencies, and so we were kind of tired of being pitched to a lot, or having people come and tell us how we should do things from a business standpoint, but not really taking the time to, I think, fully understand and appreciate, when I worked at CTV or when I worked at Talent Inspector, fully appreciate the business, and, that we were 150-year-old newspaper and that sort of stuff. So I think we just took a different take when we started our agency of really wanting to hone in and like a lawyer would do a very deep discovery on our clients and make sure that anything that we were recommending, we felt very passionate about what we were recommending, that it was really going to be good for their business. And I use this analogy all the time at work too, but of thinking of Miracle on 34th Street, and he's like, oh, go to the other store, of like, never recommend anything, and I'd rather turn away business than tell them to do something that I don't think is going to be strategic. So I think that's been a large part of our success is how much we care about our clients, how much we really want to understand our clients, and how much we really want to be a long-term partner of them. So not trying to, not favor the quick buck or the quick win over anything else. But I think that's been sort of our big strategy. And then it's really making sure as we grow that we honor that and we train people in that same sort of way, so they all have that same consistent, they understand who we are and what makes us special, and deliver on that. I think that's been a challenge over the years, is trying to get everyone to buy into that vision that we have, right?
No, and that's a challenge for many organizations, I'm sure, right? The sharing the vision, especially of the founders, and carrying that through as the organization grows.
Yeah, I'm sure you found that too, as a business owner yourself, right? Finding the right people, keeping the right people, and making sure that they understand your vision for what you wanted to create is key.
Now, Morgan, I know that there's the days where it's long days and lots to
No,
do, and
never. Yeah.
uh, but there's also the exciting moments.
Mhm.
Could you tell us about a really cool branding exercise or a really cool strategy you implemented, without necessarily naming the client, but it's like the where you were like, with the end result, you were so amazed with. It's like, oh, I know it took a lot of work, but look at what came about from it.
Yeah, you know what? I have a bunch. I think when a recent one, we worked with a bigger firm, and I think over the years, we started off working with smaller firms, and a lot of times we'd work one on one with the lawyers at the firm, which is fantastic. But very much too, they will often sort of hand off some of the exercise too. They'll be engaged for sure, but you guys are the experts, that sort of thing. As we've grown and grown with bigger firms, working hand in hand with really talented marketers has been fantastic. Worked with, I won't name names, but worked with a firm across Canada, and got to work hand in hand with one of their marketers, and she was fantastic and challenged me in many different ways, in all the best ways. But we really got to understand their business and walk through all their many offices and meet the people. And one of the big campaign ideas really came from walking around and interacting with some of the lawyers and seeing what they did for their clients, and how they were literally pulling apart things, and how they were really coming down to their own discovery of like, how do they make something, now I'm trying to think how I don't give it away who it is. But how do they safeguard things and do that? And so really, taking on all of our knowledge of the client, and really working hand in hand with their marketing team, who's super strategic and really wanted to get it right too, which was fantastic. And then working with my creative director and my husband to come up with that big idea. And we did have to sell them on it, because they have a great, fantastic name, but they didn't necessarily want to use in the advertising. But that was sort of part of it, because they were changing their name. So really sort of trying to pull that out in a campaign, and then it ended up winning some awards, which was really fantastic. But I think what was the sweetest success was how proud I think that marketing team was, and how it kind of bolstered across Canada in the offices kind of a little resurgence of their excitement about the firm and the client and what they were doing, and how what they were doing was really important to their specific area of law in Canada. So it was pretty cool.
Well, and it's the client. We learn a lot from client stories, and to your point, when you match good talent on your end with some a client that is demanding in the best ways, where they challenge you, like you said, in the right ways, can really bring about results that even you couldn't imagine. So that's always fascinating.
It's true. It's true. And I found that over the years too, of like just more and more working with really other strategic marketers. And they sometimes kind of, it just, as you say, push you a little bit harder. And it's not in a bad way, but if you can really sort of nudge each other to greatness, then you just get such a better result. And you see how engaged they are and how passionate they are about what they're trying to do. Because really, we come in as an outside, branding company and marketing company, and they're the ones who have to live that brand, right? So it's absolutely critical that they fall in love with it as much as we do, and they are able to honor that and see how they're able to grow it from there.
Now, Morgan, I know the digital world has evolved a fair bit, and as a result, the branding and marketing world. And when I think over the course of the 20 years, the digital world specifically is night and day what it used to be like, and since the inception. So, how did you adapt to these changes, and how did your team and sort of the organizational structure adapt to the ever
That's a,
evolving world?
yeah, that's a great question. I think part of it is we came in at an interesting time, in all honesty. Um, we coming in, websites, especially in the legal space, were pretty new at that standpoint. People had, they had them, but they were very much brochureware at best. And it's just, we came into an area that was always changing in many aspects, but a lot of the fundamentals haven't changed of, business strategy and brand strategy. And I think a lot of the tools have changed along the way, and the mediums that you do it in, or where you're doing it, might change, but some of the fundamentals haven't. I think you were asking how we, have adapted. Our teams have definitely changed, and we've grown, right? So right now, I think a hot thing for law firms is they're all really engaged in, social media and content, and, personal brand building and employer brand building and all that sort of stuff. So social media has been very hot. So just making sure they're using it strategically and understanding all those things. Digital marketing we've been doing since the beginning. So I mean, I remember running pay-per-click ads, 15 years ago myself, and doing all that. So a lot of that is still around. I think it's just gotten more competitive, and we've all had to become more strategic, which is great. And I think a lot of firms have become more sophisticated in their understanding of what we do and how important marketing is, or branding is, or digital communications are in driving real leads for their firms. So it's exciting to see that. I'm excited to see how firms become a little bit more sophisticated in using data to make decisions, right? Of understanding the connections. There's a lot more tools now of how that's all, how they can mine that information and then really sort of build out communications, and build out plans that are more effective for their clients, which is great. I'll be interested to see how AI changes everything for all of us. That's a hot topic right now. So I think just being curious about all those things is absolutely critical, right? I mean, all of us, you can't afford to be stagnant, so you have to be constantly trying to learn and educate yourself on everything new, and then being know when to kind of slough away some of the it's not really change. This is just noise and excitement around something too.
Yeah.
You
Well,
must
and
find that
it's
in your area also.
well, absolutely, and I think you identified it correctly. Like being curious, consistently learning, because then you learning and understanding the various aspects well enables you to educate your clients effectively, because that's
Yeah.
ultimately they're looking to you as the subject area specialist. And the more, and as this area has evolved, the more you are informed around it, the easier it becomes
Hmm.
in this conversation.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, I hear a lot about the evolution of AI, and questions around like, how
Yeah.
do you stay on top of it, right? So it's
Yeah.
uh, and the and that's why the lifelong learning is so important. It's probably more important than it's ever been, because of the pace at which technology is evolving these days.
I agree, right? And finding, I think that's a key thing that we're always trying to hire for. And it's hard to hire for it, but of trying to look for people that are innately curious, right? And because that's the only way that I think businesses can stay competitive these days, is you have to be constantly, I think, trying to make sense of change and make sense of new technology and new data, but then also, yeah, really just kind of filter out the noise too, right? There's lots of stuff you could run off on tangents all the time, but not everything is worth running off to chase too.
Um, Switching gears a little bit, Morgan. Being a business owner, as well as managing a team, working with clients, there's always a lot of things to juggle. What are some productivity tips that you have that work well, that you could share with the audience,
Sure.
that you've figured out over the years, and that somebody could take away from your wisdom?
Well, so I think one of the things when I was at Torstar, we actually got to sit in. It's a program called Getting Things Done,
Mhm.
and that is, forgive me, I forget the gentleman who created it, but he actually came in and spoke to the whole company, and it's been instrumental for me, honestly. Of It's super simple, it's super pragmatic, but I think any business owner or all of us really, we have so many different things coming at us. So a big part of it is really just doing every week a big brain dump and organizing everything of what needs to get done, and then really organizing it based on where are you at, like of stuff that can get just done when I'm at the phone, everything that needs to get done. It's I think it's like 2-minute tasks versus like big projects, and then just kind of taking a couple hours to kind of each week break down your big projects and then moving it into manageable tasks throughout the week has been instrumental, because that way you're kind of taking some of the thinking out of it. You're doing your really big thinking time there, but you're not overwhelmed with all of your to-do list. All of us have way too many things going on right now, and you usually have probably overcommitted on 10 different things of you've got speaking engagements and meetings and projects, and then just trying to deal with the general running of the business. So I think that's been absolutely critical of kind of keeping a very good system in place for me, and just doing that big brain dump and organizing that brain dump every week keeps me honest, and keeps me honest about how much I can really achieve, for one. Because you look at your schedule pretty quick and go, okay, well, I'm not going to work 14 hours every day, so let's figure this out. What can we actually do, and how do we parcel it out? And then I think hiring great team, like I can't stress that enough, of as you grow, you quickly learn you can't do it all yourself. So hiring really fantastic people that will deliver, that are smart and capable and critical thinkers, and that they'll be able to deliver on those things has been instrumental to our growth and our ability to grow, and us to accomplish more. So just we have a fantastic team. So I think that's the saving grace of it all.
No, and having met some of your team, I know you have an excellent team.
They're
Uh,
good. They're a lot of fun too. So that's always nice. They make work
well,
enjoyable, which is
it comes
important.
with the territory.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and you need some fun people in marketing and branding, right? Like there needs to be a fun edge to everything you do.
Well, I think even just in working in legal, I mean, I think anyone who works in this space, it can be stressful, right? Sometimes, it can be a stressful environment, and there's tight deadlines, and it's important decisions. So I think we try and have a lot of fun at the office, and there needs to be that sort of joking around and banter between colleagues, and I think if you like your colleagues, you're much more willing to kind of put yourself out there, and stretch yourself and help, raise your hand when you're also busy to help someone out because you care about them, and that sort of thing. So I think culture is super important to an organization, and just having people that you respect and like and work with are is you know super is critical to the business.
Uh, Morgan, around again,
Yeah.
around advice, I wanted to ask you something because a lot of our audience will be marketing leaders within law firms, within professional services. What advice would you have for them? Whether it is how do I take the next step in my brand, or how do I make sure my brand and my marketing initiatives are sort of always fresh and staying up to speed with the
Mhm.
trends. What takeaways could you leave them with to say here's a lens to think through your various initiatives you may be working on?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really critical for every marketer, but internal marketers, when you're thinking about branding, that I think you have to have a really good understanding of what your overall business strategy is. I think you need to fully understand what you're trying to achieve as an organization, and I think brand should flow out through there. And I think thinking about your firm's brand, the importance of internal and external. So, most of our clients are in the service based industry. So, a lot of times we're talking about, employer branding and client branding. And there needs to be a thread that binds the two together, because, essentially when you think of professional service firms, somebody, their client is in the factory watching things happen all along the way, right? So somebody internally has to understand, everybody internally has to understand what the firm's brand is, and where you're positioned and what that means, and then how to essentially live that brand. So I think getting really strategic and helping internally connect those dots for their leaders who may not fully have a real understanding, right? There's this misnomer that branding is really all about, logos and colors and, headlines and all that sort of stuff. And that's a nice byproduct of branding. And that's, the fourth P in our, product price and promotion sort of thing. But it's certainly not the most important part of it. It really is about getting a very sound strategy of, what are we trying to achieve as a firm? How do we need to position ourselves in the market in order to achieve that? And then our marketing plan of, how are we going to communicate that both internally and externally so that it's a very consistent and authentic voice. So I would just encourage marketers to really help connect the dots for their leaders internally, help them understand kind of where it sits, and then help translate that of, here's kind of where it flows, and here's the value and what we're driving back to the organization, right? Nothing speaks louder than finances, I think, a lot of time too, but a strong brand will definitely impact the finances of a firm, right? It allows you to withstand, market fluctuations and, recessions, and hire the best talent. There's a whole host of reasons why firms should do it, but I think helping them connect those dots of why that's such an important strategic exercise is critical.
And you're right, Morgan. Often professionals don't fully comprehend the purpose of the marketing departments, and
Mhm.
the nice collateral is fine, but without a strategy behind it, it's only really superficial, and it's not
Yeah.
pushing it to that vision of the organization.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think getting people marketers to kind of help reposition, they're not a cost center of an organization. They shouldn't be a cost center of an organization. They should really be a strategic partner that's, I think, helping to build the business of the firm and be an instrumental, player at the table to sort of help decide where the best places are to go or co-create those, and make things happen. So for sure.
Well, and often what we hear from marketers, Morgan, in many of the events that you and I would have
Mhm.
been to is, well, we get it, but how do we get our professionals to listen to us? Any advice you'd have for the internal teams on how to get that buy-in internally? Because they are right. Often they get it. Sometimes it's just hard
Yeah.
to get the buy-in.
I think it comes down to, I think you got to understand what the motivators are of your leadership. What are they trying to drive? What are the things strategically as an organization? Do they even have a strategic plan? What are the firm's overall goals? And really showing, I think, that you are and I know I keep using the word strategic, but a strategic partner. So somebody who fully understands the financial aspects, who fully understands the business aspects of, as this firm, we are trying to achieve X, Y, and Z, or we need to grow in these markets, or we need to do these things. I think if they can translate it as much to business as opposed to marketing and promotions, which is all great, but really translate it to the business, I think that changes everything. It starts changing the conversation slowly by slowly. The more you can either bring it back to, sound research and data, or a core position of really understanding. And definitely, I think it's an obvious though, take the time to really fully understand your firm, the people in it, the nuances of the people, what are their motivators, what are they trying to drive, and really try and, pull it all together too. But I think you just earn a lot more respect by pulling all that together and really sort of pulling on what's important to them, and then kind of weaving in the other stuff together, and making a cohesive story for them.
So a lot of preparation to get that buy-in, a lot of the data points by
Yeah,
understanding the
know your
professionals
stuff
and
100%. Like you should never go into any meeting and not know everything in and out. If you have the if you're gonna negotiate with a lawyer, you have to be prepared to be cross-examined. It's absolutely critical that you know your stuff, you are listening and hearing and can pivot your arguments, but it's absolutely critical that you know your stuff. I wouldn't dream of ever going in unprepared. That would be crazy. So
well, and preparing it in a way that resonates with that audience, because
yeah,
to your point, these professionals, many of them for a living, poke holes at at
for
things, and
sure.
you really need to present it to them in a way that they're like, okay, despite me
Yeah.
poking holes, this actually makes sense.
Yeah, and I think sometimes saying no is an important tool in our tool belt as marketers of, sometimes when you're dealing with charismatic individuals too, or it's just, here's, yes, we can do that, but here's why I wouldn't. Or sometimes that's a really critical thing to get respect and get buy-in, but also help everybody stay focused and get results, because sometimes there's really new shiny things that we want to get distracted with, and I think helping your leaders stay focused is also very important too.
Um, we're going to get a bit futuristic now, Morgan. We talked a bit about how to get buy-in, and I even heard a leader say last week that in leadership roles we have to spend a lot of time in sort of two buckets.
Mm-hmm.
One is planning, and then strategy. And it's like generally we do a good job at this planning piece, but the strategy piece we often neglect. So if there's one takeaway from one of the things that from what you mentioned today, is to really make sure there's time around that strategy with a lot of planning
Yeah.
around it. But on that note, what does the future look like? And this is where I said we'll get a bit futuristic. What are some of the trends appearing that marketers should be aware of, or that you're seeing play out? How can they best prepare for this coming future?
A lot of the trends I think I mentioned too. So we're talking about and getting asked to speak about. There's more engagement from HR and
Mhm.
marketing. So as a combined of really understanding and how important differentiating your firm is for an effective talent strategy. So that's critical. That's coming about, and I think having your marketing and your HR teams really align early on and get clear on, how do we attract the right talent that's going to deliver on our client brand, and how do we train for that? How do we educate? So that's that's probably one of the bigger trends in branding that I notice. I mean, other things like purpose branding and all that sort of stuff. A little bit of micro branding of how do we take our brand and how do we personalize it for different audiences, and really let them kind of personalize that to them. That's a key thing in branding. Digital is always changing, so I'm noticing that there's lots of technology changes of GA4 coming in this year, and so analytics and all that's going to change too. Of what can we learn, how can we tie in all of our tools together, and how do we make sense of the data. I think the problem isn't anymore that we don't have data, it's how do we make sense of the overwhelming amounts of data that we can garner on stuff, and how do we get people in there that can not only sort of understand that information but translate it into um, translate it into something that we can use as a firm for business development efforts, and generating smarter content, better content, engaging our clients. What does that look like? So that's a trend that we see coming in, is really data mining and that sort of stuff. AI, who knows where that's going to go from many different aspects, how it'll impact design and content, and where does it sit, and where do the ethics lie, and what's unique and not. It'll be interesting to see where that all comes in. And then I think social platforms is, lawyers are a little late to the market on it, but everyone's really excited about social media right now, and what do they do? So, what happens to Twitter for lawyers, which they once loved, and how does that, how do, is that still a place of choice for them, or LinkedIn, and how do they do it smarter, and how do they get a little bit more, I think, strategic on their social media efforts, whether it's earned or paid or whatever. So those are some of the things that are coming down. There's a million. It's just keeping up with them. SEO is critical to law firms. I see that a lot now in bigger firms. Bigger firms at one point weren't necessarily interested in things like paid digital advertising and SEO, but they're becoming way more conscious of the fact that they can't lose on that side of things. So again, not anything new, just firms are at different places, so it's interesting to see how that's all changing.
No, I appreciate that, Morgan. There's a lot of insights there to dissect for the audience, but it's a few areas that you're right. They're evolving quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
for firms to be mindful of. And an interesting learning for me, big firms being interested in SEO, because you're right, the traditionally wasn't the case, and it's interesting to see that play out.
Yeah, why I think you can't afford to not be where people are looking for you, right? And it so much is relationship based and stuff, and reputation. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not making sure that you have to be found for the things that you want to be found for, right? If you want to be a thought leader in patents, or if you want to be a thought leader in insolvency or corporate restructuring, or any area you want to, you should be found there, or else you look like a laggard, which is never a place you want to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Morgan, we're going to switch gears and go to a really fun aspect of the podcast and our last piece. And it's called the rapid fire question.
Okay,
So
all
what I'm
right.
looking for here is I'll ask a question and then just a short answer, whatever comes to mind. There's no right answer, wrong answer. It's really just whatever comes to mind first. What is your favorite word?
Oh, probably right now it's nuanced.
Nuanced. I really like that. What word do you hate?
uh, Unpack. I think that's one of my least favorite of let's unpack this in a marketing standpoint.
Oh, the lovely
The
business
buzzwords.
jargon that we hear too much of.
Yeah.
What word do you have a hard time pronouncing, if any?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I can't think of that one. I pass on that. I'm not sure.
No, no, it's
Uh,
that's why I said if any, because
yeah.
often there are people that don't.
Yeah.
What is what is your favorite word in another language, if any?
Ooh. Um. What is it? I don't know if I have one. What is it in Costa Rica? They say, was it Pura Vida? Is that right? Or that
Pura
one?
vida, yeah, the pure life.
Is that,
Yeah.
yes?
Yes,
That one stands out.
I love it. And one word to describe yourself by. And I know this is a hard one to pick one word, but what would it be?
So this one I actually know because I said I was going to tattoo it on my arm one day as unstoppable. So a little bit of
I love it.
I got a
I
lot
love
of
it.
determination. So
And I must attest to it, Morgan. You are unstoppable and a
oh,
force of nature.
thanks.
Whether the tattoo is physical or not, you embody it. So that's
Oh,
that's the reality. Uh,
thank you.
Morgan, I really appreciate you joining me for the session today and being mindful of your time. We wanted to keep it at a time that is also reasonable for you, but a lot of little components for our audience to dissect and learn from. And as always, I'd like to encourage all our audience to follow and really subscribe to the channel, just because there's so much coming up on Firing on All Syllables, and that they can find this on all the major podcast platforms: Google, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. So thank you again, Morgan, for your time today.
Thank you, Gary. This has been wonderful. Always great to see you, and hopefully I'll see you next week.